Broadcasting live from the abandoned campground on the horrible, no good, I don't want to go there ever plain of Duskmourn, which is also a big mothy boy. It's complicated. It's Tap Tap Concede! Hello, welcome to Tap Tap Concede. I am your host, Kathleen, today. I have deposed Graham because we have a very special guest. It's Sean McGuire!
Hello!
My gosh, yes, that is Hugo Award-winning author Sean McGuire. Oh my gosh, yes, lovely Sean McGuire, author of many of your favorite magic stories under pseudonyms like Mira Grant, her horror imprint, I guess, and writer of things like the Marvel, What If Peter Parker and Wanda Maximoff were siblings? What If book that just came out that got really good reviews, and all sorts of other things, like your own series of books, which, how many times have you been also nominated for other awards for them now?
I don't know.
Too many.
I feel bad saying that, but I really don't know.
It's too, occasionally, when you're just winning so much. No.
I don't really win. I'm the Susan Lucci of most genre awards. They're like, we're going to nominate Shannon because it's fun to make presenters say her name.
But also because they love your work.
That's very sweet.
Yes. But anyhow, it's super cool, super amazing, popular author Sean McGuire. And look at how good I am. I'm not fangirling out at all. And we're here to talk about the Duskmourn story.
Yes, we are.
Yes. But before we get to that, I want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors for this episode, which is always Card Kingdom. They are a kingdom of cards. You can order online. You can say, loading ready run, sent me, button please, and they'll send you a 1-inch button with a hilarious joke on it. For a while, our 1-inch button said, how about you na don't? I
didn't get one of those.
They're either gone just in time or they'll never run out now because he's been banned. But, for a while, that was very timely.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you and your kindly support of us on patreon.com, you let me not have a real job, which, as someone who has a tenuous grasp on ethics, manners, behaving well, not being obstinate, I really appreciate that. So thank you so much to everybody in our community and Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring the pre-releases, which is what got Shannon up here to talk about Magic Story.
Having been here for 2 days now and watching you run around, I would say this is very much a real job. It's just not a corporate real job.
That's true. I did spend most of yesterday editing a video. So yeah, look, I work.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow. So let's get to it.
Okay.
But as a word of warning, previously, when we've done our story recaps, when we've done story episodes, it's been kind of recap heavy. I don't think we're going to tell you much about what happens in the story of Duskmourn beat for beat for beat. But if you are interested in reading that, and I really think you should, please go to Magic Story in any search window, and it will take you right there. And then you can click on Duskmourn House of Horror, and then you can see all of the episodes. There's 6 main stories, and there's 6 side stories, but one of them is kind of an extra special treat that I won't spoil for you. But if you go there, you can see what I'm talking about because it's really fun and cool.
It wasn't until after we were done and it was 6 and 6 that I realized we should have found a way to scrape out just one more to get that 13.
Oh, that would have been perfect.
I know.
So you, under your Mira Grant pen name, wrote all of the stories for Duskmourn.
That is correct.
So you wrote all of the main story and then also all of the side stories. And the side stories really fleshed out the world and stuff like that. So I'd kind of want to talk a little bit about the side stories before we dive into the main story, if you're okay with that, and talk about what it was like to sort of build that world out and what kind of stuff you were reaching for, and because I know you're working from the Wizard's vision, but I loved how you brought it to life.
So Duskmourn as a plane is absolutely the plane of 1980s horror, which is part of why I was honestly the perfect author to do it. I used Kenneth Muir's Horror Films of the 1980s, which is a book reviewing every single horror movie released anywhere that the author could find in the 1980s. I used it as a checklist at one point. I went through and watched everything and then wrote my own ratings for the movies into the book. There are some movies you shouldn't know. Just don't. your life is more valuable than those films.
Wow.
But there's also some really, really good horror. So Duskmourn is starting from that place, that aesthetic of 80s horror. So for the side stories, what I did was instead of doing 80s horror, each of them actually maps fairly closely to a different decade of modern horror, starting with the 1950s and moving forward from there. And if you follow them that way, you can see the aesthetic that's coming in. So Welcome Home, which was our very first side story, and it is a second person perspective, which isn't a thing we get to do often in Magic, where it's, you enter the room, you are welcome here, please take a seat. That's very 1950s horror. That is Vincent Price narrating to you, though I like to think that Uncle Vincent would not do that to me. And then we just kind of move through those decades as we're going with the side stories.
Amazing. That's fantastic. So my favorite of the side stories was probably the Beasties side story.
Everybody loved the Beasties.
Well, it's because they're a very mysterious creature even within Duskmourn. And I really liked reading it. And then I read to the end and I was like, oh man. And then I read it again, right? To sort of catch up on that perspective. I liked how you made it very, like, I don't know. They have their own way of speaking, which I appreciate. Get ready for my incredibly smooth brain take, Sean.
It's all good.
But yeah, I don't know. What was your inspiration for the Beasties?
Well, so the Beasties, if you read the Planeswalker's Guide to Duskmourn, which I'm assuming everybody listening knows what that is, but it's an asset that Wizards of the Coast provides to introduce you to a new plane. So it'll kind of tell you what the creatures and factions of that plane are. If you read the Planeswalker's Guide, it tells you that the Beasties used to be the domestic animals of the plane.
Oh.
So when the house swallowed everything, it kept the people who can feel complex fears and feed Valgavoth. It kept the people as they were, but it transformed everything else and it twisted it into Valgavoth's own image. Well, with the domestic creatures, what it made was these big kind of 80s Muppet critters that still remember that they are domesticated. They still remember what it is to be loved. And so they will seek out survivors in the house and befriend them and protect them. So if you have a beastie that travels with you, you are a little safer than someone who doesn't. You have somebody that will fight for you.
You have a little nightmare dog cat.
Yeah, exactly. Or horse. It was all the domestic creatures. I'm sure there are beasties that could trace their lineage back to bunnies, ferrets, guinea pigs, cows.
I think a cow could do some serious damage if they were so motivated.
Oh, yeah. But so for the Beasties story, I wanted to be able to look at the Beasties as they are, which is why we're coming from a Beastie perspective and not a survivor perspective, because a human is not going to see a Beastie the same way a Beastie sees a Beastie. And we know that they're at least somewhat intelligent just based on the cards that we've seen them on and the way they interact with their environment.
They seem very intelligent. They're very keen. Like, I love the talking about how proud they are of their mural. And how they're like, they were given this, but it sort of, traces their domestic roots. It's like, yes, they gave this to us. This is ours. So this is special, right? Like the same way, dogs like, my bed, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so the real inspiration for the Beastie story itself is actually a pre-existing short story by an author named James Tiptree Jr. called Love is the Plan is Death. Which is about the romantic relationships of giant alien spiders. It has nothing to do with Keep Them Alive, which is the Beasties story, but it has a very similar vocal cadence. So I was kind of going for that sense of alien, but using the words. And that was a fun one. When I turned that in, the editorial notes were just full of people telling me I had made them cry.
Oh. Aw.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. The end is pretty sad.
Yeah. It's in Duskmourn. All the ends are pretty sad.
That's true. Speaking of keeping them alive, what I really liked was the sort of the little like gentle backstory we got in the 2-part side stories where you sort of talk about somebody who's just like, man, I want to get out of here and go to different places in this house and, make my fortune and stuff like that. And, they finally make their way sort of through the house in a bad way. But you get a little bit of backstory about Duskmourn, about how the house had to be, rationing its survivors so it didn't run out of food and, let them have children and stuff like that, which to me seems like, I don't know if I would want to have kids in Duskmourn, but at the same time, if there are these relatively stable places and the whole world is gone, right? There's going to be lots of people there.
Duskmourn is a cocoon almost spun around Valgavoth, who is a giant, horrible moth demon. And Valgavoth is intelligent. He knows he needs to eat. So he's smart enough to have a garden and was planting survivors as his garden. Before the omen paths, it took so much effort and energy for Valgavoth to open a single door. It would just take ages upon ages. And now, of course, he can hijack omen paths and just have as many doors as he wants. But during the period between the formation of Duskmourn and the Realmbreaker, that whole time he was maybe getting one fresh caught meal a year. So he had to be farming what he had, or he was going to run out.
Right, he would die. Poor Valgavoth.
Poor Valgavoth. He deserves better.
Well, now he's got a veritable interplanar smorgasbord coming towards him, doesn't he? So with the side stories are all really wonderful and great, and we haven't even discussed all of them, but we could go so deep into stat, and I want to talk about the main story.
Story.
But please read all the side stories. They're very fun. All right, so the main story starts out with a motley cast of characters. But they all seem to follow, I think, some really fun sort of genre tropes, because you did say it was the plane of 1980s horror. So we have our brains, which is Zimone. We have Tyvar, who's the jock. We meet an angsty goth. And also Jace is there, so I think he's also checking our angsty goth.
I think, and also Jace is there is the tagline of Magic in 2024. Like and also, for reasons we cannot explain, Jace is there.
He's up to business. Why would you take your child? This is a complete diversion. Why would you go there?
I don't know.
Well, you can't tell me. Why did I even ask you? These are good questions. We'll find out later in Magic Story. But as a parent, I would be like, whoa, does this seem like a weird nightmare house? Maybe I'm not going to take my child in there. That's just me.
My opinion, because I genuinely don't know, I think that they were following Lut's map of the omen paths, because Lut has a complete map of the omen paths in his head, and they accidentally crossed one of the omen paths that Valgavoth had already hijacked. I don't know that Lut's map is continually updating. So if they really thought that they had found a door to Eldraine and were on their way to Happy Fairy Tale Land and just stepped through and suddenly they're in one of Valgavoth's halls, we know from watching Kaito that Valgavoth can control whether or not you can planeswalk in. So...
spooky.
Yeah. It's a bad time. We're having a bad time.
I'm sure that if anybody can deal, I'm sure that now that spoilers for the end, now that Valgavoth has been wounded, maybe Jace can finish him off. I don't like Valgavoth very much, and I don't like what he entails for the universe.
I don't either. Like, I just love the idea that Valgavoth's out there going, how many planes could I be?
Yeah. Good job for putting something very hungry in the fridge, but I don't like that meal, and I don't want to eat it.
Don't worry. If you don't eat it, it will eat you.
Oh. Normally, I just freeze my leftovers that I don't want to deal with anymore and then compost them afterwards.
So there is a solution that I don't think we've hit on yet, which is we just send Grist to Duskmourn.
Oh, She. Okay, I was right on my pronouns. She'd love it there, I think.
Yep. Grist would just assemble the biggest swarm and eat Duskmourn. And either Valgavoth would keep regenerating the plane like he does right now, and she'd just keep eating it, or the plane would die.
Oh. Wow. That sounds great for everyone, honestly.
It's the blob versus the stuff. Let's go.
You know what? Oh, this could be Magic the Gathering's AVP.
Yeah. But yes, we start off with a motley crew of characters that have all been assembled because they've got to try and rescue Nashi, Tamio's son, who has been lured into the house after the disappearance of the scroll that contains a digital echo of his mother.
Yeah, he had it on Thunder Junction.
Yeah.
But now it's lost somehow.
Yeah, and that I also don't know how that happened, but it's basically AI Tamio, and he is heading into the house to get her back. He actually went into the house 3 months ago.
Uh-oh. He's been there for a while.
He has. Though there are a lot of indicators both in the story and on the cards that Duskmourn can kind of manipulate time, that Valgavoth is not rewinding time necessarily, but Rip Van Winkling time. Yeah, exactly, stretching it out. If you look through the cards, you'll see a lot of the survivors, they're very clean and they're very well fed. And that's not necessarily how you're going to look when you've been living in a giant hostile haunted house for your whole life.
But if you just were brought in, then you're still going to be,
you're still optimistic and your clothes still fit. And
you're not wearing wallpaper like old winter is.
Exactly.
So we get in there and we have our wonderful group of people. Although before they do that, they have to go to Ravnica and we get to meet Niv Mizzet, who's acting very casual. I have to say. I assume he's living for this hands-on research stuff.
Yeah, so Niv Mizzet, when we see him in the story, he's got the door to Duskmourn kind of cordoned off and they're running tests and they're studying it. And he can tell that it's something parasitic and bad, but he doesn't know how bad. I don't think you can understand how bad until you've gone to Duskmourn. So Niv Mizzet is just like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's not fine. It's not fine, Niv. You are making terrible mistakes. You are Wayland Yutani importing a xenomorph right now. What the heck, Niv?
Well, that sounds like something that he would do, though. But also,
it does.
Also, I like that Zimone is like, okay, well, now I'm going to do a semester at Prism University over in the 10th district, essentially, to, do her thesis. I love that she's there. That seems very natural to me. Of course you would. So she's there. They meet up and they all go in. And we get, I would say, a motley crew of people. We've got Kaito and the Emperor, because the Emperor feels very obligated to Nashi because she had to kill Tamio. And she says so in the story, that she's like, oh, maybe I killed her too quickly. Maybe I should have stayed my hand. We had some other people come back, and then I don't remember who says it to her.
Nico.
Oh, right. Nico. We'll talk about how much I like Nico all of a sudden after this. Is like, or everybody would have died. You don't know that. And it's like, yeah, you can't really I get the opinion that Nico is the kind of person who's like, okay, well, that happened. Move on, right?
Yep. You can't rewind time. You've just got to keep going forward. We're not going to put Nico and Teferi in the same room. I think they would be very unhappy at the idea that you can rewind time.
Oh, they would be
so miffed.
Furious. Absolutely pissed.
Yeah.
Could we put them in the same room?
Yeah, let's. Yay!
So Nico is there, and Nico is so we've got two characters who I think that we have, obviously we kind of know what the Wanderer is like, and we know what Kaito is like because we've seen them before on strike teams and stuff like that, but we've got two characters that are newer. We have Zimone, because we've seen her in the Strixhaven stories, but this is kind of her first time really coming back for a main perspective, I think. And we have Nico, who I think this is their biggest first appearance. And we have, I would say, one of your favorite characters. You took a character that was sort of like a very C-tier planeswalker of oh yeah, this guy, the set mechanic planeswalker from Kaldheim. And we're like, but I like him. So Tyvar's there.
Tyvar.
He's, to me, the sort of the real, I don't know. He's the glue that holds this team together.
He kind of is.
He saves the day multiple times by being very Tyvar-like the whole time. But if you're not familiar with Tyvar's personality and why Shannon and I like him so much, I would describe him as a glorious himbo.
I generally will try, when I'm trying to sum him up very quickly, I'll say, imagine Gaston as played by Brendan Fraser in his George of the Jungle era.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
He is a jock. He is in it for glory. There's a reason he's a black-green aligned character. He's in it for personal glory and because he wants his story to be told across the plains. He wants to be the greatest legend the multiverse has ever known. But he's also a genuinely sweet guy. And he is not stupid, but he's not the brightest because he doesn't see the point in wasting the time.
Yeah, he could be smarter, but he chooses to focus his attention elsewhere.
Exactly.
Being stronger.
Being stronger, being more impressive, doing cooler stuff. This is all very important to Tyvar.
Making sure his hair looks good.
Making sure his hair looks good. He does not wear a shirt. He does not wear shoes. I think his last 2 appearances, we've had some character that hadn't met him before. Last time it was Chandra. This time it was Zimone. React to his appearance by going, why isn't that guy wearing a shirt?
I mean, I think that's a fair question. I'd be cold, personally.
Yeah.
I was just walking around mostly bare-chested.
And part of why he doesn't really deal with shirts and such is that he is a transmuter. So anything that touches his skin, anything natural, he can transform his entire body into and continue moving and doing whatever it is he's doing. He used to need to have the material in hand. So if he wanted to be rock, he used to have a pebble that he could hold. Now he can kind of keep a buffer of materials he's touched so he doesn't have to be actively touching them at this moment. He does still have limitations. He can't turn into gas. He'd blow away. He can't turn into a liquid. He would squash all over the place. But as long as it's a solid, he can turn into it. The fun part, and the point where I fell in love with Tyvar as I was getting to really understand his power set back when I was writing Phyrexia All Will Be One, is that if he is touching you, he can also turn you into whatever it is. And while you are transmuted, your own magic is suppressed. He is a physical fighter who could put Jace in the ground.
Right.
He just has to get close enough to get a hand on him.
Right. He touches Jace and then, ooh, that's so powerful.
It is. I really think it was an accident, but I verified multiple times, is this how it works? And they're like, yeah, no, this is how it works. So we wrote it into the story several times that this is how it works. And he did it on his first appearance in Kaldheim to some, I think, goblins or possibly trolls, I don't remember, that were attacking him and Kaya in the woods. So he's just glorious. I initially looked at him on the on the Phyrexia strike team and was like, this dude doesn't wear shoes. He's going to the planet of nuclear waste.
And syringes.
He's going to have a problem. I don't know if I like this guy. And then I realized he could turn himself into hex gold, which is the material that can be used to resist phyresis. And went, oh, so you've sent the man that can turn himself into silver to the planet of the werewolves. Yeah, of course he went along. This is his equivalent of a whack-a-mole game.
Yeah, he's like, wait, I get to go to the most terrifying place in the universe where I can be a Yeah!
Exactly.
Let's go! Like the only person bounding happily into the Phyrexian portal.
Pretty much. And that's him on Duskmourn, too. He is the only person who is having a good time. And you can see that on all of his cards.
Yeah.
The new Tyvar card, which is Tyvar something Pummeler. Tyvar the Pummeler. Like, he is clearly having the best time in the art.
You can, Duskmourn is great. You hit these things and then they get up again. You don't have to worry that the fight is over, like the wolf he kills at the beginning of the story, like in a One Punch Man maneuver. He's just like, oh, so much exercise for me.
Yeah, it's like that cutscene in Kingdom Hearts 2 where just 500 Heartless pour out of the valley onto you at once. And he is having the time of his life.
I love Tyvar.
I love Tyvar.
You've given him so much personality that wasn't there. I love that. I mean, that it was there, but what I really like is when you're talking about 30,000 words, there's a real economy of language that you have to do. You can't sort of luxuriate in everyone's head. You kind of have to double dip. You have to describe other people with characters so you can get their view on that character, but also give information to the reader and stuff like that. And Tyvar just seems like a joy to write because you get to say things like, I don't think he's ever having a bad time, says Zimone, while everybody's trying to frantically escape and Tyvar's in the background basically doing the woohoo! Wacham, like throwing cultists around, he's in like a cartoon and everybody else is in Saw, right?
Yeah. He is in one of those horror comedies that the 80s were famous for.
Yeah.
Where
he's having an Evil Dead kind of time.
He is. And people did die in Evil Dead. People did stay dead. So there is still threat. But while he's being threatened, he is going to hit a dude with another dude. And
Yeah.
that's going to be the best moment of his day.
Yeah, until he hits another dude with another dude, and then, you know.
At a certain point, he's got a dude centipede going. Like, he is just hitting these dudes. And because everything in Duskmourn is covered in fish hooks and teeth, they're locking onto each other in this just increasing Katamari Damacy ball of dudes with which he will then hit you.
Yeah. Don't worry about Tyvar. He's always having his best day. I think we need more like really positive people in media. Just like be like Tyvar.
Yep.
Be unbothered, but also punch people who deserve it. I think that's a great.
And I think it's actually really important that Tyvar is centered black, because so many of our black centered characters, for valid reasons, are
selfish
and angsty and gloom and the palace of my pain was constructed with the bricks of my agony and is held together with the mortar of my suffering. And then there's Tyvar, and he's just like, I'm a selfish jerk. Let's go fight some stuff.
Well, Tyvar to me has like, okay, so you say he's centered in black, but there's the other side of black, which is confidence, ambition, roguish charm.
Yep, and he's got all those things.
So this is like very like, I have a character in Friday Nights, which is like our magic sitcom that we do. And my character in Friday Nights is centered in black, right? As a character point of view. And it's the same kind of like, no, I'm just like this smarmy asshole sometime, except Tyvar could actually punch people, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, it's sort of like, you want to hate the guy?
But you can't.
No, he's got massive charisma and huge muscles. He's useful to have around, and he will rescue you because he is, you know, despite the fact that he's very confident and knows he's great and expects people to recognize that he's great. Like gets annoyed a couple times that people don't check him out when he comes into the room.
Tyvar absolutely has to be seen, because if he's not seen, his story won't be told. He will always save your bacon, because if he saves your bacon, then you can tell people about it.
His legend grows.
I
love characters like this. Speaking of characters that I love me a good misanthrope. I'm quite partial to them for personal reasons. And I love that we got to explore Nico's character a little bit as they come along on this adventure. As somebody who's friends with Tyvar, or from Kaldheim, they're from Theros originally, they're maybe not having a great time since the Omen Pass have collapsed. And I really want to explore that, because like, so often you see people who are angsty for like good reasons, and I just kind of get the vibe that Nico is angsty for like these kind of reasons, you know? And I love that because it's such a good diversity of character.
Yeah. Nico's not misanthropic so much as Nico is justifiably pissed off. Their life on Theros, they were very much told, this is what it's going to be. Your destiny has been set for you. And Nico pretty much said, screw that. I'm not going to do that. Missed on purpose during an athletic competition when their destiny is that they never miss. And that was what awoke their spark and allowed them to planeswalk off of Theros. So for them, being a planeswalker was the ability to control their own destiny. It was seizing the ability to set their own fate. And then, thanks to the actions of a strike team they were not a part of, in a war I'm not even sure they knew was going on. I'm not certain anybody told Nico Phyrexia was coming before Phyrexia was there. Their spark was extinguished. And yes, there are omen paths, but can they really go back to Theros knowing that they will then be trapped by their destiny because they can't leave easily? And they're bitter about it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that over the course of the Duskmourn story, we're dealing with 3 former planeswalkers. We have the Wanderer, who is ecstatic. She's now the wandering rescuer, and she is so happy about the fact that she gets to stay home on Kamigawa and take care of her people. She has not yet reclaimed the throne, so Lightpaws is still holding as her regent because she wants to understand Kamigawa, and she was never given that opportunity as an adult. So she is very, very happy. For her, the extinguishing of her spark is the best thing that could possibly have happened. Tyvar, who is just like, having a spark is easy mode, bro. Whatever.
This isn't going to stop me.
Yeah.
A minor setback.
Okay, cool. So, like, they patched the game and nerfed my character a little bit. I'm still better than you. And he really does not so much care about he could take it or leave it. Tyvar, you must remember, doesn't know how he sparked. His first planeswalk, he was on Kaldheim, and then he was on Zendikar. And he just thought he had discovered a new realm of Kaldheim. He wandered around for a little bit, probably fought some horrible multi-toothed monsters, picked up an interesting little rock, and went home. And he put the rock on the necklaces that he wears. So he's got a Hedron with him. And that was it. There was no real trauma. There was no real excitement. He didn't know he was a planeswalker till Kaya told him. She's like, "Where'd you get that rock?" "It's a cool rock. It's my rock." "Why?" "That's from the plane of Zendikar." "Cool story. Let's go punch some stuff."
Yeah.
Not a lot of
Neat
attachment there. Nico, on the other hand, we have that bitterness, and we have that kind of, am I less than I was? Am I the same? What's going on, as they try to figure that out. And a lot of their motivation for going along to Duskmourn is, we can't let the planeswalkers have all the fun. I refuse to let the absence of this thing mean that I am not in the adventure anymore.
Right. I don't want to just sit back and retire and be caught by my own fate.
Exactly. They are still going to make their own fate. It's just going to take a little bit more work.
I like Nico's perspective a lot, because to me it's really like, it's new. I'm not super familiar with them. And I like the economy of how you get across this kind of bitterness. Like I said, my takes are incredibly smooth brained. But my comment on this was, "Mwah, my compliments to the chef for this quote." And it's a little exchange, and it's sort of like explaining what is going on, but also it's a good character moment, which is, like, to me, really well done. And they're talking about the concept of glimmers, which are like little, like, yeah, I'll just read it. "Your glimmer," said Winter. "Everyone in Duskmourn has one. It's your hopes and dreams, or whatever's left of them anyway. I think the house makes them. No one really knows." "Where's yours?" asked Nico. "Where's mine?" And then mine is emphasized. Winter only shrugged. And I'm like, what a great character moment for the both of them. Like, Winter is a literal misanthrope. But Nico, I could just see this kind of tension of like,
yeah, why does she get something I don't?
Yeah, where's mine? And it's like, it's bitter and it's annoyed.
And it's kind of back to that economy that you were talking about before. If I had been able to write Duskmourn as a full-length novel, which my boss at Story is really tired of me asking to be able to do with every set, then everyone's glimmer would have shown up, because we would have had the time for it. But we don't have space in a 30,000 word story to devote even the 500 words to each glimmer that would be required.
Right. You get the one plot relevant one.
Exactly.
Although I do like it as from a plot point of view that maybe Nico doesn't have it anymore. I kind of love that.
That is possible. I don't know. I also don't know what Nico's glimmer would be. I think that since glimmers can be inanimate objects, Nico's glimmer would be really difficult in the house, because they would get a labyrinth. Cool. Let's just wander into Nico's glimmer for a while and hope we come out the other end.
Good grief. What I also like about Nico's point of view, and I think this is a really good example of, like, I think economy and storytelling and stuff like that, but I really like in the last episode where basically we talked a little bit about how Tyvar's power is, if he can touch something, he can transmute himself and people he is touching into it. So one of the ways that Tyvar figures out that he can be basically semi-immune to Duskmourn for at least periods of time is he transmutes himself. He literally just touches the walls and he's like, "Now I'm Duskmourn. Who's the Duskmourn now, house?" Punch, punch, punch.
Yep.
Also love that he just punches his way through a wall. It's like, oh, the door's disappeared? That's not going to stop me.
I appreciate that before he punched his way through the wall, he goes, "Do you think this wall is load-bearing?"
Yeah.
Which is another example of Tyvar is smarter than he feels the need to let on most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think maybe for Tyvar, if you're centered in black, you're also, I would say, cunning, smart, sort of like, maybe not like IQ book testy thing, but kind of like survival instincts. And to be thought of as stupid can be an advantage.
Oh, it really can.
People underestimate stupid people. So, there's a little bit of like, oh, I am just big punchy boy, aren't I? And then I somehow get behind you. But what I like about that is he transmutes himself into the house, and he transmutes Zimone into the house. And then Zimone's like, we can't actually go around here all the time, otherwise we will just become house.
Yeah. We will not get free.
But when he transmutes into the house, he's like, look, we are the house now. And Zimone is like, yes, we are the house now. But then when they go to rescue Nico, we find out what they look like in a level of detail that we had not before. Because Tyvar is not like, yes, this is what is happening to me. He's just like, no, I am house now. Now we go on. And Zimone is like, oh, that's how your powers work. But we have more important things to worry about than these, like, than what is physically happening to us. She's very practical. But then we get to Nico. You get this. It was shaped like Zimone, but unlike Zimone, it had skin made of water-damaged, splintered wood and rusting nails in place of teeth. She reached for them with its horrible hands, fingers like crooked hinges and palms like broken shingles, and Nico tried to shy away, moving as far as the ropes would allow. So we finally get a truly horrifying description of what is going on.
Oh, yeah. They're upsetting looking when they are being house.
Yeah. But I love that they're just like, yeah, whatever, let's go.
Yep. We've got other stuff to worry about.
Yeah, they're both quite practically minded. I suppose that's their shared green.
That is the green coming together. They're very practical.
Mm-hmm.
Zimone in Duskmourn is very informed by the kids I went to college with. I was a dual major in folklore and herpetology, which is fairy tales and snakes. I really was just going for the fantasy author degree without doing creative writing. And we had some incredibly canny, incredibly survival-oriented people in my herpetology department, just absolute geniuses who, the second someone else was responsible for their safety, would just clock out. Like, no, it's fine. I'm just going to wade into the rattlesnake pit. Sean will pull me back. We're good. So I was kind of going for that a little bit with Zimone, that she is very smart, she is very canny and very capable, but at the same time, she's got Tyvar there. She doesn't need to pay attention to her surroundings. Tyvar is paying attention to her surroundings. It's all good.
I like the part where Tyvar, so they get into a library where Zimone gets to do some research, and Tyvar is like, I don't want to spend time in the library. I am bored. And Zimone's like, here, we'll tie a string around one another. And Tyvar goes and explores and comes back around to Zimone, is like, oh, I didn't like that very much.
Yeah, I'm not going exploring without you anymore.
Yeah. I like how even Tyvar, maybe a little bit of doubt. The rope's still there. It's not dangling off. I was expecting it to come untied.
A lot of people were. But Tyvar explicitly doesn't do doubt. The biggest mistake I can cite in the entire Duskmourn story is that at one point I describe his tone of voice as uncertain, and that should not have been the case. When I say he doesn't do doubt, I mean on a magical level he doesn't do doubt.
Right.
Tybalt, a former planeswalker, former because he's dead, not because he's been desparked, but Tybalt, his whole magical thing was to make you feel so much doubt that it consumed you. You're going to feel doubt until you fall down and can't do anything because you are consumed by this doubt.
He's the anxiety beast.
He is the anxiety demon. And he tried to make Tyvar doubt himself, and Tyvar punched him in the nose.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, he just does not experience doubt. It doesn't happen.
But maybe maybe a concern for Zimone?
A concern for Zimone, absolutely.
All right.
Like, she could have been eaten. He would probably not look good in the recounting of their adventures in Duskmourn if he let the grad student get eaten.
That's true. So Tyvar does run off to do a rescue. That's how they initially get separated.
The house just synthesizes a voice shouting, help me, and Tyvar goes to help them, and there's no one there.
And then Zimone goes to stop Tyvar, and then they go, oh, they're splitting us up. And then the house goes, they're on to me. I'll just open up a trapdoor and trap Kaito.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to eat him. It's good.
Poor Kaito.
Well, they ignored all of the lures it set. The house kept dangling things in front of them, like, look, abandoned carnival. Look, interesting swimming pool. And they all just kept going, nope, we've got a job, and ignoring them. And at a certain point, even the ambush predator just goes, you know what? No. Forget you people.
Yeah.
Just swallow them up.
Good grief.
Poor Valgavoth.
Poor Valgavoth. No. Well, kind of. I feel like I like the origin story of Valgavoth about how he got sort of stuck there on this plane of maybe bad magic where they had magical devices that were little like literal Maxwell's demons.
Yeah, it is the Maxwell's Demons plane.
Yeah.
Whatever the plane of Duskmourn was originally called, and when I say I don't know, I'm not hiding information. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's been named. But the people who lived there before Duskmourn happened were summoning spirits to power their appliances.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the dark future of Kamigawa if they lose the memory that they need to be kind to and respectful of the kami. The kami voluntarily power devices on Kamigawa. The spirits on Duskmourn were not doing anything voluntary. They were getting summoned across the void and shoved into a salad shooter.
Or a toaster. There's a
Or a
great scene
refrigerator.
where they're building a shotgun out of a toaster. One of the side characters.
Exactly. So Valgavoth was summoned to this plane.
Was he a deep freeze?
I honestly think he was the chest freezer in the basement, yeah. But he was summoned to the plane and shoved into an appliance that was way too small. So he was kind of powering the whole house. And then the people that had summoned him moved the heck out. They were just like, no, not going to do this. And sold the house without disclosing that there was a giant demon in the basement.
Just like you would not try not to disclose, foundation problems.
Yeah. Valgavoth is black mold.
Yeah.
And then the new owners of the house, their daughter, Marina, was getting badly bullied at school, and Valgavoth convinced her to bring him the bullies. So Valgavoth ate the bullies, and that kind of broke the water tension on his bonds. He still couldn't get out, but he could start to expand what he controlled. And that is how the house began eating everything. And then the more it ate, the more it could expand.
And then it ate everything, both sons.
It ate both sons. It ate everything.
Is there a reason it has two sons, or just to be like, it's different?
Most planes, if you need it to look cool, two sons is a really quick way to do that. But a lot of it was that one of the big challenges with the fiction on Duskmourn, especially the early stuff, was that Duskmourn is a 1980s horror movie. It is that Pixar film Onward, where you've got a completely mundane landscape. You've got suburban houses with garbage disposals and televisions in them. And how do we make that not only look but feel magical? And Two Sons is one way to help it look and feel magical, because that is such a great departure from our world. I'm really proud of probably the part of the Duskmourn story that people liked the least, which is the opener, where I had to describe a suburban city street.
I like the opener.
Like, it had to be done, and it took days to accurately describe a suburban city street, not using a single word or phrase construction that you would use for a modern one. I couldn't just say the HOA mandated everything be beige.
Yeah.
I had to work my way around it in a big circle.
Yeah, a welcoming sameness.
Exactly. So that is part of why there were Two Sons, was just having that fantasy element, having something visual that we could hold on to. And also Valgavoth deserved a little treat.
Two nom-noms.
Two nom-noms, just one, not just one nom-nom.
I feel like you feel much more kindly inclined to Valgavoth than I do.
Yeah, he's kind of a jerk, and he did eat the whole plane, but he gave me a magical 1980s horror funhouse for Tyvar to punch his way through.
That's true. And then also Jace is there.
And also Jace is there.
We'll find out what he's doing later.
Presumably.
It'll be fine. I'm sure that he just left Kaito to his own devices. I'm sure Jace is not gonna have a black mana pip the next time we see him. Actually, I want him to so bad.
Yeah, Demir Jace. Though, speaking of black mana, that was actually one of the really fun things. I love it when you have to avoid saying something, because you can come up with the best constructions. And you don't want to use the phrase black magic as inherently negative.
Yeah.
Black mana is one of the 5 cardinal colors. Without it, the pie is unbalanced. Not all black magic is bad. But it's such an easy shorthand in our culture to default to because it's been that way for so very long. And when they're doing the research in the library at one point, Zimone is talking about the magic that fuels the house.
Yes, and she says it's like not academically advisable, the kind of thing that would make Professor Vest tell you maybe you should reconsider things.
Yeah, exactly. And I just love that academically inadvisable magic is an acceptable shorthand for doing bad magic.
Yeah.
It made me so happy.
I love that when they finally meet Marina, that Tyvar's like, oh, is she the one who is doing the academically inadvisable magic loud in front of her, pointing at her? Uh-huh.
I mean, Marina ignored the fact that he was only wearing a little vest. Clearly, she is not very attentive and will not notice him pointing and yelling.
No, I just assumed that he didn't care whether she saw him or not. He also doesn't care.
That is true.
He just had his piece to say. I love kind of like, chaotic, roguish characters like that. I think they're fun.
I really want to just do the Kaya goes to Kaldheim to spend a week in the therapy lounge with Tyvar. She deserves the break. They go to
sauna. They have sauna?
Yeah, of course they have sauna. They're Norse themed.
Yeah.
So they go to sauna and then they go fishing the giant salmon in the river, a giant trout, and they just have themselves a nice restorative time. Tyvar Kell's Lodge for traumatized planeswalkers.
Oh, I think that would be nice.
It would. Secret Lair win.
Oh, okay. So I could get so off topic. We're 45 minutes into our podcast, so I want to.
We've put the exhausted ADHD people in front of microphones to talk about lore. Let's see if they can stay on topic.
It's not going to happen. All right. So in your magical healing lodge, what are your like, obviously you want Tyvar and Kaya to have like a bromance essentially time of like going and like doing some therapeutic punching of something like that. Who else do you invite on this trip? This is your fantasy trip.
This is my fantasy trip. I would bend heaven and earth to get Nahiri there. Nahiri needs some help. And I think Tyvar would actually be really good for Nahiri because he likes her. They've met, and he doesn't have a negative impression of her. He is not automatically disposed to assume that she's a monster.
He would hate Soren if he met him.
Oh, he would hate Soren so hard.
They would bond over, be like, who's that asshole?
Exactly. Though if we want someone from Innistrad, I think Arlen could benefit from hanging out in a nice sauna and having a good time. There are just so many planeswalkers. I love my planeswalkers.
Who is the most misunderstood planeswalker? I feel like you've done a lot to rehabilitate Tyvar and to give him a personality that sort of expresses outside, and then also now sort of comes back and influences the card because now he is the jubilant brawler.
I know,
he
it's
is
so
the pummeler.
good.
He is looking happy all the time because that's what he's like. So
yeah, he's just having a good time. Yeah.
I love that. I think we need more. There's so much, you have angsty characters, you have scheming characters, you have creepy characters, you have to have the whole rainbow of like big strong guys who don't care.
Yeah, I think our most happy planeswalkers right now, no angst, are Tyvar, Kaito, and Kaya.
They're all black aligned.
It's
because black can move on.
Yeah, Kaya does have some angst. Kaya has severe PTSD from Phyrexia.
And then watching her friend not get killed, but like finding her friend dead, that's not good.
Exactly. But the entirety of the Murders at Karlov Manor story was just dealing with Kaya's PTSD in addition to everything else. And that made me really happy in a horrible way because I like it when characters can process and move on. But unfortunately, you can't do that entirely off screen or the character doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, like, why are you feeling so cool now? You need to get a few thousand words to get into their brain.
Exactly.
More magic story.
My answer on who is the most misunderstood planeswalker is consistent across all media, and that is Nahiri. When you actually look at the timescale involved in the various ways that she's suffered, that she's been isolated, that she's been left alone, this is a woman who spent thousands of years by herself. Yet she's a little bit inappropriate when she gets out of the Gila Vault, but I can't honestly say that anyone else would have been in a better mental state.
Poor Nahiri.
Poor Nahiri. And
We could do a redemption arc for her. She could finally move
tried.
past. I hold out
let's start
hope.
again.
Yeah,
Let's
start
just
again.
Redeem.
It could be very interesting because then you can have what is honestly, it's a great trope and people love it. Is you can do an enemies to lovers, and you did it in Jason Vraska.
I am not doing an enemies to lovers with Nahiri and Soren.
Absolutely not. But somebody else that she's pissed off. She's pissed off enough people.
It's true. She has pissed off a lot of people. But I love her dearly.
People love a good redemption arc.
People do love a good redemption arc.
And she can still be annoyed.
Yeah, she's never not going to be annoyed. The red alignment will always be there.
But she is white aligned too.
Yeah, my mother, who really does not speak Magic the Gathering, she knows what a taiga is. The dual land from original. She knows a taiga because if I have put a taiga on top of something, she is not supposed to touch it.
Interesting.
I still have my play set from high school.
Oh my goodness.
So I have 4 taigas in little cases, and I will just move them around the house and put them on things. And then Mom knows to leave that pile alone. But she doesn't recognize any other cards. She knows who Nahiri is. She knows who Tyvar is. She kind of semi-knows who a Johnny is. She calls him Sexy Catman. But the fact that she can recognize Tyvar and Nahiri, I think, is a statement of my love for those two.
What if you had maybe not? I don't know. Is a Johnny interested in romance? Could do in a Johnny romance.
You could do in a Johnny romance.
I think he'd be honestly
not with Nahiri.
No, that'd be like a friendship.
That'd be a friendship, yeah. But no, in a Johnny romance, a lot of people I think would really like in a Johnny romance. And we're already courting the furry community with Bloomborough, so I don't know why that sentence was so hard to say. Courting the furry community with Bloomborough.
Now we're courting the horror loving community with Duskmourn.
And there's such a big horror community. I did see someone wondering, are we worried about the tropes in Duskmourn because they're so American? And I think that that people forget how incredibly globally dominant American horror was in the 1980s. Italy and Japan were making their own horror. There's some great Spanish horror. There's some amazing horror that came out of Latin America in that time period. But pretty much everywhere you went, you could find the American horror. So a lot of those tropes are fairly globally known in this context.
And now they've been redigested into a whole new generation of horror movies and stuff like that. So I feel like they're like just foundational now.
Yeah, at this point, exactly. And some of the things that we think of as American tropes are really not. There's a card in Duskmourn called Orphans of the Wheat, which is a bunch of creepy children standing in a wheat field. It has just popped up. And I'm now looking at the art for Orphans of the Wheat, and they are clearly blonde and they have glowing eyes. And that does not actually come from 1980s horror originally or from Stephen King.
Is it from
The Midwich Cuckoos.
Oh.
Which was a John Wyndham novel released in the 1940s, I think.
Oh.
It was 40s or 50s. I'm pretty sure it was 40s. It's been made into a movie several times, Village of the Damned.
Ah.
That is where the creepy psychic children trope came from. So this is almost a 100-year-old trope, and it did not originate in America.
Surely it's only an 85-year-old trope, but it's a British trope. And I wonder if it's based on kind of like even like earlier folklore.
It probably is. It's probably coming out of the Changelings tradition. But I find that Orphans of the Wheat is much more indicative of the Midwich Cuckoos than Children of the Corn for me.
Well, and Children of the Corn sounds like it's basically sort of an Americanized adaptation of it. I haven't seen
much.
Children of the Corn.
Oh, we could fix that.
No, I don't want to, though. I'm a baby, Sean, and I was like afraid to read the story.
There are like 17...
What if people die?
People do die, but they mostly get better.
Yeah.
There are like 17 Children of the Corn movies. We could watch them all.
Okay, but if we watch Children of the Corn, then you have to watch Southland Tales.
What's Southland Tales?
Oh, this is a digression for another podcast.
Okay.
But if you put it in the comments if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. But before I had one more thing I wanted to talk about, and now I got really distracted, and now I'm just going to have to take a second to remember what it was.
I now know how easy it is to get from my home in Seattle to Victoria, so I don't think Kathleen understands that I'm going to show up at her house with a full box set of Children of the Corn movies.
Right, that was it. The Fate Shifters. Because I said I was afraid people were going to die, and you said, well, people died, but most of them got better. And so I thought that was really clever. So one of the sort of minor characters that is there in the story that we haven't discussed yet is Amanatu is there. And we finally get a breakdown of her powers.
A partial breakdown anyway. She is not all powerful, but Amanatu the Fate Shifter is someone we have seen before. She has appeared on quite a few cards. Amanatu's Augury, for one, which lets you play up to just a ridiculous number of cards off your top deck. So we knew she was powerful. She'd been described as very powerful. She was the youngest planeswalker.
Yeah, she sparked because she foresaw that her spark would ignite, so she made it ignite.
She looked at all the different futures and saw that her spark might be coming, because it comes in many of them, and just decided to be in one of the timelines where it happened now. So she is another planeswalker sans trauma, which does lead to the question of why is she no longer sparked? She must have allowed it to happen because she would have seen all the different futures. And why is it better not to be a planeswalker now?
Yeah.
So that is the thing I have not seen a lot of contemplation on. I have seen people going, how can she be desparked? She's all powerful. I'm like, well, because she let it happen.
Yeah.
Why?
Maybe she knew she'd get it back one day. Maybe she knew that this would be a challenge she would have to endure.
Maybe. I don't know.
She seems like the kind of person who might be like, yes, this is a path I must walk.
But for herself,
Literally.
we know that she can kind of choose between potential timelines. So for the individual people in the party that are going into the house, she makes fate shifters, which are just little clay dolls, which she gives to them, and they allow them to rewind one choice up to about a minute in duration.
Yeah.
So we see every member of the strike team die.
It's great.
It is, except for Kaito. We do not see Kaito's fate shifter go off.
No, because he's sneaky like
At the end of the story, he's still got one.
That's probably a great boon.
I'm sure this will never come up again.
We're just stocking the fridge.
Yeah, it meant I got to kill everybody, and I was allowed to get as gory as our PG-13 rating allows.
It was great. What I really liked about it is that, the Wanderer is like, I'm going to run in and kill these wicker folk. And she's like, whoa, no, we're not doing that. Nope. And she is genuinely unsettled. But Tyvar's reaction to seeing his fate shifter go off is to be like, oh, I see what I did wrong there, but I haven't actually lost that battle yet.
Yeah.
Oh, mwah, 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 mwah.
Thank you for the rewind. Good. I'm just going to do it right this time.
Yeah. He's like, oh, I love that he does not interpret it as don't touch that. He's like, oh, touch it different.
Yeah.
Economy of storytelling, yet it says so much about him as a character.
Yeah, we had a good time. The fate shifters, I was initially a little leery of because I felt like it was going to possibly be cheesy. And it turned out to be cheesy in the right way.
It's that
1980s horror kind of way.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. And we now know that Amanatu can, to a certain degree, manipulate time, which is another reason for her not to go into the house. Because if Duskmourn can slow time inside and can kind of keep the food fresh, what happens when someone who can manipulate time goes in there? We don't want Valgavoth to have her.
No.
And it was very interesting to me because when Nico meets Amanatu, their reaction is pretty much, what the hell?
They're mad.
They're mad.
I wish we had been able to see more of that conversation. I wish we'd had them have an argument.
I feel like if we could have gone into it more, it would have been more understandable what was going on there, because Tyvar is watching Nico be mad at Amanatu, and then he picks up on being mad at Amanatu.
Because he's very kind of empathetic a little bit.
Well, that, and from his perspective, he doesn't understand the limits. What he gets is that this very powerful girl, who is powerful enough that his friend Nico knows who she is and is upset by her existence, has just told him she can rewind time to spare people horrible deaths. Where the hell were you when Phyrexia happened?
Yeah.
And his reaction is very much born of, we lost so much. I know I bring her up a lot, but Nahiri and Tyvar were on that strike team together. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's told her I don't think anyone's told him she's alive.
No, I don't. Well, she's hiding on Zendikar.
She's hiding. I'm not sure anyone really knows that she's alive. But from Tyvar's perspective, his new friend did this incredibly heroic and cool thing, which A+ Nahiri, and died to save them. And that is a great story. But the heroes reunited is an even better one. Mm-hmm. So he's just looking at Aminatou and going, where were you when Nahiri clove the world? Where were you when Vraska got infected in the first place and cost us Jace?
Why didn't they bring the magical fate-shifting child?
Well, because she's a child.
Yeah.
I mean, from a narrative perspective, Aminatou, unfortunately, has a certain degree of plot armor because she's like 8.
Ugh.
And this,
I have an 8-year-old. My God.
yeah, this is a family card game. Even if it's just in the story and not shown at all on the cards, which is something that we try to avoid. We want the story and the cards to match as much as possible. But even if it's just in the story, you can only put that 8-year-old in so much danger before it becomes a problem.
Well, it's like when I do Dungeons and Dragons, when we were always talking about lines and veils, like my hard line is there will never be a harm. There's no harm to children or animals in anything I'm doing. And like, I feel like that's the same.
How are you defining animals? Because in my D&D game last session, we killed like 90 giant spiders.
Like pets.
Okay.
Like one of the characters had like a companion dog, like that was basically like an additional attack in battle, right? And like, you know, some more carrying things. And so I was like, all right, well, we're not hurting your dog on camera, right? Your dog will be fine. Your dog will withdraw from combat if it is hurt.
And that is why Yoshimaru stays with Aminatou on Ravnica rather than following the Wanderer, because we also didn't want to hurt the dog.
Right.
We have the same rule in a lot of my D&D games. My sorcerer has a frog.
The frog's okay.
His name is Trashcan. She just picked him up one day and has kept him now for 4 real-life years. And Trashcan is always fine. But I would hurt the dog if the player brought it into combat. She doesn't bring Trashcan into combat.
Right.
So once the dog is in attack, the dog is a target.
Right. But can the dog die, or can the dog just be returned to 0 HP like a too important NPC that would break a computer game if it died?
I would just take the dog to 0. I wouldn't kill the dog, but I would absolutely hurt the dog in combat if the dog was being used as a weapon.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You can punch the dog, but the dog won't die. That's the plot armor.
That's
dog
fair.
armor. Dog armor.
Dog armor. But Aminatou is very hard to use because she has that plot armor.
Right.
Now, as time moves forward, because we're not old walkers anymore, she's not a planeswalker at all right now, she is aging at a normal rate. And that means that in another 4 to 6 years game time, we'll be able to do whatever we want with her.
Right, because she'll be a plucky teenager.
Wahahahahaha.
So look out for that.
Yeah.
Shannon, we've been talking for over an hour at this point.
Yeah, that is true.
I could keep going.
Oh, yeah.
We could keep talking. But unfortunately, I think it's time to wrap up this podcast.
I think it would make the editors sad if we kept talking.
Yeah. I mean, big ups to our editor, Heather, for getting these online. Thank you so much, James, for running the board.
Oh, you want me to say something? You're welcome.
Yay! Shannon, thank you so much for being here. This was so fun to talk about just characters, plots, motivations, stuff. Like if you are a Vorthos, or you know people who are Vorthoses, or you're like, I could become a Vorthos, you should do it. It's fun.
It actually is. We get to argue about fictional characters all the time, and no matter what you say, someone will tell you that you are wrong.
And that's kind of the fun, though. It's okay to have strong opinions and argue and care deeply about things that ultimately are just for fun and do not affect the world, but are an enriching thing to get involved in.
They are. Yep. I enjoy the enrichment for my enclosure.
Yeah, me too. Well, on those chilling words, let's not give Valgavoth too much more enrichment for his enclosure. He's well fed.
Welcome home.
Oh, he's so stimulated. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, thank you so much to Card Kingdom for sponsoring this podcast. Please use our affiliate code. That's cardkingdom.com/LRR and say Loading Ready Run sent me button, please, and you will get a fun 1-inch button that will say something funny. We promise it. And if you enjoyed this and you think, gosh, this is the kind of thing I want to support monetarily outside sort of the capitalist grind, just because I like it, God, that would be great. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. We're one of the better, I think we're in like the top 50, but we're one of the higher ones that's not pornographic.
Nice.
Maybe we're in the top 150. I'm bragging. Cut that out,
Pin
Heather.
up calendar.
You know, I'm sure people would want it.
I know.
I don't. We're not going to give it to them, though.
That's a good choice.
Yeah. What? That's like some things can't be taken back once they've seen your bare dogs.
So I had somebody break into my hotel room a couple of conventions ago, which freaked me right the hell out because like my computer's in there and all. It didn't take anything. Took some of my underwear. Yeah, there are things you do not want to open the door to because Valgavoth is on the other side.
God, on that true horror note, thank you so much for joining us. This has been Tap Tap Concede. I've been Kathleen.
I'm usually Shannon. Good night.
Wait,
What?
where can we contact you? Where if people want to find you?
So if you can spell my first name, you can find me. Pretty much every other Shannon on the internet is either a fictional character from a video game called Red Dead Redemption, a character from Homestuck, or a sheep farmer in Ireland. That is 90% of the Shannons. It's Seanan McGuire. I'm at SeananMcGuire.com. I am also on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Tumblr. The Tumblr is actually me. That is not someone pretending to be me. I don't understand why people keep thinking that.
It's your shit posts.
It's my shit posts, yes. It's very important that you know that.
Yes. Oh, and the bonus features.
Oh, and the bonus features. So for every story in Duskmourn, main and side, I picked the story apart on a line-by-line level to highlight references, intentions, point out my own mistakes occasionally, and make sure that people got as much benefit as they could from what was going on. And that's at SeananMcGuire.com/blog, B-L-O-G.
All right. With that now concluded, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.